I'm so excited to be here with you today for getting to know a Native elder. I'm excited to ask you a little bit more about who you are and where you come from. Can you tell us that story?
Well, sure. It's really a non-traditional background where many Native elders have grown up in Native communities. My community was Los Alamos, New Mexico, home of the atomic bomb, full of PhD scientists, and we were one of the only Indian families in the community.
And could you tell me a little bit more about your tribal affiliation and how you ended up in Los Alamos?
Sure. I'm a member of Cherokee Nation and didn't really adopt or come into my Native identity until many years later when I landed a job as executive director of the National Indian Council on Aging. It was the first step into the deep water of Indian country, and believe me, it's a deep one. But it changed my life. This was in 1986 or so.
1986. Well, that's a long time ago. I imagine you have learned a lot since then.
I've tried to learn a little bit.
Well, when you were growing up in Los Alamos and finding your way in Indian country as an older adult, did you grow up with any nicknames or did you find yourself a nickname later?
Um, no, I did not. Mockingly, my teenage friends would call me Baldy, uh, but I did not have a native nickname, and we were, as I said, one of the only Indian families in the whole community.
Yes, you did. You did. I'm I'm curious to know then, Dave, how does your background or sort of your identity that you've come into later on as an Indigenous person influence your way of living and being now?
Well, I was on my high school SATs, the top 1% handler of the English language. So I've always been articulate and pretty fluent in English. Um, but my real intro to Indian country came in 1986. I was a brand new, very green executive director of the National Indian Council on Aging. Uh, One of the first mentors that I met was Wilma Mankiller, and I became friends with Wilma and her husband, Charlie Soap. I was also profoundly influenced by two or three Native elders. One is Gilbert Towner. He is from the Siletz tribe in Oregon, but ended up living the last part of his life in northern Idaho. He would smudge in a teepee every day. He was a very traditional guy, and he, as I said, he had a profound influence on my awareness of Native things. He coached me and advised me in my dealings as a brand new guy with Indian elders, with our board of directors, who were all Indian elders. And so it was just invaluable and tremendously influenced my life. Another mentor was the former, now deceased governor of Tesuque Pueblo, Jim Hina, who was the executive director of the National Indian Council on Aging when I took over. Jim really gave me a lot of personal advice about dealing with Indian elders. As I said, our whole board was Indian elders, and I feel I was in very good hands with those mentors.
Yeah,
And
those are, yeah.
I would add a third surprise one, kind of. Um, uh, I was very couched in Indian issues, but I was brand new to federal legislation. And my first partner in the business in 1992, it started, was Bill Benson, the chairman of our board. Bill has a profound understanding of how government works and how Indian country fits into that scheme. And I've relied on him countless times for great advice.
Those sound like incredible mentors and I am honored to have you as a mentor. So to hear where you gained your knowledge is
Thank you. Yeah, they
meaningful
were
to hear
profound.
today. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. I'm wondering from your perspective, what does it look like to respect and protect Indigenous elders?
Well, from having grown up in an urban non-native community, I didn't have that daily contact with them and a chance to learn their mores, to learn their values, to come to respect them. I came to all that through my work at NICOA, and I have they've had a profound influence on my life. They changed everything for the better just by being who they are.
How do you think others could model that? What could we learn from you and how to protect and care for Indigenous elders?
Um, Well, I think the key to the whole show is being open and receptive because they have ways of knowledge that we don't. They've learned in different ways than we have in many times, and yet they bring this profound presence to the table when they come, and it's just such an honor. And so I spent
Mhm,
a great deal of time just observing and uh, not leading the charge, but you know, following their lead. And
mhm,
again, they've given some profound examples. Gilbert Towner, the Let's guy, was a Purple Heart and Silver Star winner from the Korean War, and he's is just an amazing man. He grew up known as Zeke. He was a big kid, always brawling at the Indian school, getting in trouble, and he really didn't find his identity until he became a Marine at age 17 or 18, and was just a remarkable man.
mm. I'm thinking about what you said just a minute ago, Dave, about um, the ways that people learn and gain wisdom over life. I'm wondering what are some of the ways that you've learned over your life? What are some of the experiences that have shaped you?
Probably the single most important thing was to sit down and shut up. Uh, if we're observant and if we're very respectful, we have access to tremendous volumes of knowledge that come from these Indian elders. And it shows in their perspective, it shows in their values, it shows in their daily activities. Uh, but they are walking lessons on how to be for me.
Mhm. Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. And now I am one. Oh my gosh.
What an honor.
A lucky thing.
How do you think about preserving the legacy of Indigenous elders as people might experience memory loss?
I think it's to go into our interactions with them and with Indian country as a whole and with individual tribes and organizations with a very open and humble mind.
Mhm,
We have a very great deal more to learn by listening than we do by talking with or talking to them.
mhm. Yes, yes. And what you said about how to go in with an open mind sort of makes me think, how can non-native people support the well-being and protection of elders as well?
I think our first instinct often as non-native people would be to bring them into our world and
Mm,
to interact with them in our value system and in our ways of doing things. Often
mhm,
we're have a great deal more formal education than they may, but I think the heart of it is to listen to them because there is value in their perspective and in all their remarks.
mhm, mhm. Dave, that makes me think, what do you want to be remembered for?
Well, for many years, it was I wanted to be remembered as a football star. Uh, that did not come to fruition. I would just like to be remembered as a kind person more than anything. And that's a very humbling experience. And it takes a lot of focus to be kind to everybody. But
Mhm.
that is certainly, if I could, how I'd like to be remembered.
Well, that's surely how I'll remember you, Dave, and I imagine many others will. Thank you so much for sitting down with us and helping us get to know you a little bit better. Is there anything that you haven't shared yet that you'd like to share with anyone listening?
Well, gosh, I don't know. One thing, if I had only one thing to share, it would be to participate, to learn from them, and to be present with them, not on our terms, which I said are often more educated and more fluent, but on their terms, which rely a great deal on their observations of life and their personal experience with life.
Thank you again, Dave. That's such beautiful advice.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate this chance to talk with you.